Martin Truex wins. Several drivers have drama, including Denny Hamlin and Ross Chastain renewing the rivalry. Also, Kyle Busch and Joey Logano. And we got to talk about Austin Dillon and Bubba Wallace. Let's get into it. Coming up next. What's going on? Hope everybody is doing good today. All right, Martin Truex wins the big race. The second half of that race, very controversial, a lot of cautions. Martin Truex basically dominated that second half of the race. First half of the main event, at least, was kind of interesting because you had Ryan Preece up there battling. You had Bubba Wallace leading several laps, including leading at the halfway point. But Martin Truex gets the job done. You see this picture here from James Small. Great picture of the group all together. But once again, the heats were actually the better show. You know, you had Almirola, you had Byron, you had Truex, and I think you had Hamlin win those in the last chance qualifiers, which probably 50 laps is probably a little bit too long for the last chance qualifier, but you had, McDowell and maybe Chase Elliott win those. Yeah, Chase Elliott winning the last chance qualifiers. So you had that particular situation where the last chance qualifier and the heat races were kind of, except for that very last chance qualifier, that one kind of got strung out. They were kind of actually better than the actual race itself, and there are several reasons for that, in my opinion. I think, first off, 28 cars is too many cars for that size of the track. They probably would be better off with exactly 20 cars. That would probably make a much better race, because I think the reason those heat races are better is because there are fewer cars on the track, and you've got room to move and make some moves. So that's why I think the heat races always end up being better than the actual main event. Just too many cars on the track for that size of track. That being said, with those too many cars, there's lots of drama, so let's get into the first one with Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin. From Bob Pockers, Denny Hamlin said he could be mad at 5 guys and 7 others could be mad at him. It's hard to point fingers. So, of course, while they wanted to make an issue of this on TV about it being Ross, Chastain, and Denny Hamlin getting into each other, it looks like Denny Hamlin is really just sort of brushing this one off of his shoulders. We won't get that carryover that I guess a lot of TV people wanted to get that extra drama, a layer of drama or whatever going for this season. So I don't think we're going to get that, because it looks like Denny Hamlin's just brushing it off of his shoulder, and I couldn't even find anything where Ross Chastain even had anything to say about it. And that's exactly what I thought about it when I saw it live. I was like, this is an absolute nothing burger. The only reason they're even bringing it up and saying it's something else is because it's Ross Chastain and Denny Hamlin.
3 just never try to make a corner. He just always running to my left rear. It is what it is. It's I got run into the fence by him down the straightaway on that restart, so I gave him a shot, and then we get dumped. So it sucks. But y'all are looking for something, but I ain't gonna give you nothing.
What about? All right, so you see Bubba Wallace there actually showing maturity. You got to give the guy credit where credit is due. If this was last season or something like that, he probably would have had a very emotional response, but he has learned over his time in the NASCAR Cup Series. The reporters are just digging for drama, and he didn't give them the drama that they wanted there. So used a lot of maturity there. But obviously he was unhappy with Austin Dillon, and obviously Austin Dillon was unhappy with him. I've seen this particular song and dance go on. If you watched this race, you saw how Bubba Wallace was driving Austin Dillon. You saw how Austin Dillon was driving Bubba Wallace. You knew how this was going to end. Whoever got in front, if they couldn't get away as soon as they got in front, they were going to get punted by the guy who was in second. I don't care who it was. This is just the way it's going to go. I've seen this at many a short track. So if Austin Dillon had got in front of Bubba Wallace, believe me, he would have been punted by Bubba Wallace as well. But Bubba Wallace got in front of Austin Dillon, so Bubba Wallace was the one who got punted. They were just driving each other rough, and that's what happens at tracks like this. Just watch Bowman Gray. It happens every weekend at Bowman Gray.
I definitely am behind on that young buck. So, one of these days I need to start getting back on the horse and grabbing it by the horns, I guess you'd say. But, it's really unfortunate to be raced by guys that are so two-faced. We were in the TV booth earlier in the night together, and when we were all done with that, he was like, "Hey, man, good luck tonight." I'm like, "Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, whatever." And then lo and behold, there you go. He wrecks me. So it's just don't even talk to me if you're going to be that kind of an on the racetrack.
All right, so you see Kyle Busch's reaction to the Joey Logano deal. Now let's see what Joey Logano had to say about it.
You got into the 8, and what happened on that?
I just overdrove. I screwed up. It was my mistake.
So So there you go. Kyle Busch very unhappy with Joey Logano, called him two-faced, and Joey Logano saying, hey, it's my fault. I take that on me. It was 100% my mistake. So maybe they can get that ironed out. Sounds like Kyle Busch doesn't even want to hear it because he said, don't even talk to me if you're going to be two-faced like that. So Kyle Busch is already in mid-season form. Just in case you were wondering, was he going to change his attitude when he went over to RCR? Looks like so far the answer is no, and I'm happy about that because Kyle Busch is always a good story. All right, let's get to good race, bad race. Good race, obviously, for Martin Truex. He wins it. Good race also for Austin Dillon. He finishes second in the Clash. He finished third last year, so if he keeps his progression, he should win it next year. Kyle Busch finishes third. Great run. Kyle Busch was probably the other story in this event. He basically got spun out and had to work his way all the way back up through the field, so he actually added the most excitement at the end of the race because you were watching Kyle Busch work his way up basically from last place all the way up to, at one point, second before he relinquished that to Austin Dillon, so Dillon could go after Martin Truex and see if he could do anything with him. Alex Bowman finishes fifth. Kyle Larson finishes fourth. Kyle Larson finishes fifth. Tyler Reddick, didn't talk about him a whole lot, but Tyler Reddick, nice run there, finishes sixth. Ryan Preece had an up and down night. He showed what he could do. Unfortunately, had a fuel pump problem, so Ryan Preece is seventh. Ross Chastain ends up eighth. Denny Hamlin, once again, those guys are right beside each other, finishes ninth. And William Byron is 10th. And Denny Hamlin got spun out by William Byron at the end. Not 100% sure what that was all about. Now we get on to bad race. Definitely bad race for Ryan Blaney and Todd Gilliland. It seemed like every time, and they had cars that were getting up to the front at points in the race, but it seemed like every time they got to the top 10, they got spun out or they spun themselves out. In fact, Todd Gilliland, golly, they needed the 3-spin rule on that guy at one point because he was just spinning out. Of course, Bubba Wallace and Ryan Preece. Bubba Wallace probably had a second place locked up. I don't think anybody had anything for Truex, but Bubba Wallace probably had a second place car. Him and Austin Dillon's cars were pretty much even, so Bubba Wallace definitely had a second or third place car, but he got to bumping and banging with Dillon, and it ended up like it ended up. And also, bad race for Ryan Preece with the fuel pump issue. Ryan Preece actually might have had the car that could have handled, or at least probably finished in second place to Martin Truex. I still think Truex would have won either way, but Ryan Preece put on a show while his fuel pump wasn't malfunctioning. All right, and of course, the worst race of all was for the fans. The coverage of this race was terrible. It seemed like it was just focused on what celebrity was there. They wanted to talk to this or that celebrity. So I think it was actually the worst race for the fan because the only time the camera work was good was when they were talking about a celebrity or when they were talking about the concerts and stuff like that, when they were showing the concerts. The camera work, once again, was poor from Fox, unfortunately. I actually like the Fox booth. The Fox booth was solid. I did like Tony Stewart and Mike Joy. They worked well together, and Clint Boyer, always the wild card in there. So the booth was solid, except when they were forced, once again, to talk to celebrities. The Gwen Stefani thing, okay, it was cool. You got her in the booth, and that was cool. But there was a race going on the racetrack, and they almost missed the race for the lead in that race that they were watching, that last chance qualifier. So just a bad race for the fans because the coverage was poor other than the booth. All right, that is all I got for you on this one. If you like the content, feel free to subscribe down below. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you're already subscribed, I appreciate you being subscribed as well. If you got a question, comment, or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.